What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. We're taking a look at Wanted Dead here on the Steam Deck, and performance for this game is actually pretty decent depending on how you want to run it. So we'll go through some different settings and performance here, mostly kind of in the beginning of the game, but I put a little bit of time in here, and for the most part the performance is fairly similar no matter where I go. But we're on FSR medium here, TAA low. Graphics quality here low on everything except for texture quality, which is on medium for the moment, but we're going to go through different settings here as well. And our display is full screen 800p here with no VSync, and none of those will change. We'll just switch through graphics quality options as we go. But with those settings to start with here in the beginning of the game, performance is pretty decent and things are mostly on low here besides the textures, but we will bounce anywhere from the 30s all the way up into the 50s depending on where we're at, and that happens later on in the game just as well here as it does in the beginning. So kind of depending on how you want to run the game is going to depend on what settings you want to go with. A full 60 FPS just isn't really going to be possible with these current settings anyways here on this game, but frame times are good and gameplay feels decent. Now this is medium settings here and largely feels similar to what we have on low, except when you get into some very busy areas it will tend to drop more frames than it would on all low, or give you some different frame time issues depending on what you have going on, just as you'll see here on medium with these guys coming in, that the FPS will kind of bounce anywhere from the 50s back down to the 30s and back up here on medium. So that's the kind of performance we would get just typically in medium type settings here. And staying with medium, I'll show you this room here. We get a grenade go off, we'll even dip down to 15 FPS and back up. Those things can happen. They happen less on low. The higher your settings go, the more these things kind of can happen depending on where you're at in the game. But anyways, let's go over, we're going to switch into leaving everything else the same here, but we're going to go into high settings and take a look at that. And again, depending on where you're at, performance will change, but I picked this area here because it does show a lot on screen, and we do dip down into the 20s here. Again, depending on where you're at in this game, what kind of level, how many enemies there are on screen, effects, everything like that, you might want to do a combination of medium high if you're going here. I think if you're going for a 30 FPS cap, that might be the way to go with those settings. Now if we switch into something more like the highest settings of the game, that's going to offer even more FPS dips, of course. Again, depending on where you're at and what you're doing in the game is going to completely depend on what's going on there, but you can often see the 20s more often than not. So even though you might still go for a 30 FPS cap here, I would expect in many areas to still go below that. And I don't know if I'd really go for highest settings. It's not necessary here at 800p. You might have to up the FSR if you want to keep the frame rate up there. I'd probably just stick with something like medium or high, honestly, if I was playing this game on the deck. But even at low here, getting into this spot, performance bounces back up for us pretty good in the 50s, and it can of course dip down all the way as low as 30s or 40s as you saw in the beginning of the video. But if you want a higher frame rate, definitely going with something like all low here is going to give you something more consistent when it comes to the higher frame rate, and feels really good to play. Switching back to something like high here is going to bring you down to the 30s, sometimes the 20s, and you might get up into those 40s. So just kind of use that as an idea of what you want to do to tweak your performance. I didn't want to go too deep in this video because honestly the game's pretty easy to run for the most part. 30 FPS, 40 FPS, uncapped, and whatever settings that you want to go with that work for you. Alright guys, thanks a lot for coming to check out the video as always. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next one.